Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the DirectX 12 versus DirectX 11 performance in Battlefield 1, which is currently right now available in early access before the game actually launches if you have the Early Enlisters Deluxe Edition or if you are a member of Origin Access. So if you have either of those, you can actually start playing the game right now on a 10-hour trial before the game actually does come out on the 21st, and we are going to be focusing our performance on the GTX 1060 and the RX 480 so we can find out before this game comes out what is the best GPU under $300 for playing this game. And some of the gameplay you might be seeing on your screen right now is probably the GTX 1080 because that's where I did some gameplay capture of before I did this testing. But all of our actual testing was done in a separate test system along with the i5 6600K, along with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I recorded all of that footage off screen so that we didn't have any sort of recording software getting in the way and inhibiting our frames in any way whatsoever. For DX11, I did have to benchmark using Fraps, but on DX12, I used the Marilla's Action tool, which is really good for working in DirectX 12. And thankfully, on the latest Afterburner patch update of the beta version, we can actually use an on-screen display here to see all of our statistics, even in DirectX 12. So that's really good to see. And before we go ahead and jump into those numbers, we're going to take a look at the options that I was using in here. I did have everything in the advanced options cranked up to ultra, as you guys can see in here, and I am using a 100% resolution scale. Right now I'm on DX11, but it does have a toggle for DX12, and we're going to be showing the performance on both of those and also referencing back to the numbers that I did back in the beta. So it should be interesting to see how Nvidia and AMD have gotten better or worse in the time since the last beta. And thankfully they actually did fix the resolution scale in here. Previously, like the 100% actual resolution scale was like some weird number, like 92%. It seems that they've got that sorted now, and it's just 100% means 100%, which I think is going to just get rid of a lot of questions, from people like, why is this not 100%? So there you go. Everything else in here, though, do have it up at ultra, and these settings are exactly the same as back in the beta. They didn't bring back MSAA, which they had initially in the alpha, but that's gone now. They've just got TAA as the form of anti-aliasing, or you can go on to FXAA, medium, high, or off, but we are using TAA. For the basic, you can see here right now I'm playing in 1440, 144 Hertz, but the benchmarking run that we did was at 1080p, and I do have depth of field and motion blur turned off because I just don't like those options. I just think they make the game look worse, especially in a first-person shooter. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and jump into the performance side-by-side comparison with the RX 480 versus the GTX 1060, and we're starting off with DirectX 11. So on DirectX 11, with everything cranked up at ultra along with that i5 6600K, the GTX 1060 did pull in a victory here with an average of 96 FPS and a minimum of 86, while switching over to the AMD side with the RX 480, we got an average of 90 FPS and a minimum of 78. So that was a clean victory there for Nvidia on the DX11 side of things, and both of these cards were running on the latest drivers available from both teams, but this is like about a week or so before the game actually launches, so we may see some better drivers coming out between now and the time of launch, and if that is the case, then we will certainly go back and revisit this for the final performance review once the game does come out. Switching gears now to DirectX 12, once again, the GTX 1060 versus RX 480. We actually saw a drop on both sides of these here, but more significantly on the GTX 1060 and the Nvidia side, where they actually dropped down to an average of 77 FPS, so losing 19 frames there just by switching over to DX12 and a minimum of 66, while the RX 480 managed to only drop 1 FPS down to 89 frames and a minimum of 71. So both of those are technically losses, but the RX 480 is really kind of a tie with its DX11 performance, so those seem to be running neck and neck. Basically, that's kind of like within the margin of error there, having a 1 FPS difference, while on the Nvidia side, seeing a 19 FPS drop is certainly indicative of this game maybe not necessarily being optimized yet on the Nvidia side within the drivers, so maybe they have a little bit more work to do compared with AMD, because I looked back at the numbers that I did in the beta in DirectX 12, and the RX 480 actually got an average of 77 FPS as well as the GTX 1060. So those had a dead tie back in the beta with 77 FPS, and that was the same number here we got on the GTX 1060. So it looks like AMD has done some work on the driver level, bringing along the performance to at least match DirectX 11, while Nvidia has stayed stagnant at the average of 77 FPS. So it would appear that Nvidia has more work to do on the driver side of things, and I think it's unfortunate that we're not seeing huge gains here with DirectX 12. I would have liked to have seen an improvement maybe in performance using DX12, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case, at least not at this time. We may see that with better driver optimization and the final release of the game, but right now it's just really tying or even falling slightly behind in DX11 performance, even on AMD. One has to question if they were to actually implement a different rendering, different API like Vulkan, how that would benefit both sides as well. We saw huge gains on that with Doom, for more so for AMD, but Nvidia had some gains as well using Vulkan. It really did run absolutely beautiful using that API, and with that being just an evolved form of Mantle, which was in BF4, I have to wonder why that isn't being implemented here. You would think that would be kind of a no-brainer, as they're on the same engine with the DICE team and everything that used Mantle heavily in BF4, was really touted as one of the first games supporting it, even if it was in beta. That Mantle performance for AMD was huge back in BF4, so if they were to bring in something like Vulkan now, I would love to see what those numbers would be, but unfortunately right now we've just got DX11 and DX12 to go off of, and if it were me personally playing this game, I would choose to play it in DirectX 11, and it looks like Nvidia is winning out there. So I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on this performance, as I'd love to get your guys' feedback. Yeah, but I'll catch you guys next time.